pitch. So he sees him that no way he's a starter right now. He might be a guy that get a lefty in the bullpen, and he can throw a fastball 95. He might be a key there. So gotta look out for him.
I'm going to give you two names.
That could shorten the game for a starter. Like
I'm going to give you two names which just popped in my head. If you really are worried about pitching and they're still out there, a guy named Alfredo Simon, Big Pasta. Now, 13 wins last year. I'm just saying. Now,
Big pizza.
I understand. Now he's out there. I'm just pointing out he's out there.
Here's his car.
Yeah.
His chrome
You
down
know,
Mercedes.
Badenhop is still
Well,
unsigned. And,
I'll give you another one.
Jeff Frazier.
I'll give you the other one who's still out there is Doug Fister. He's still floating around there. I'm just saying two guys that have worn the English D that can possibly help that you can just dump off later on if you need to. But I mean, if you are still worried about the bullpen, you're talking about Mark Burley as bringing him in. Why not go bring back Alfredo and bring back Doug Fister?
Because Burley's a left-hander, and he's pitched bigger games than either one of them. That's really
strikeouts. I mean,
I do like Mark Burley. I've always liked Mark Burley. Yeah, he did well in Toronto. Yeah. Obviously, he was a god for a while in Chicago.
Yeah,
I've always been a fan of Burley. I've always felt bad. You ever hear that story about his dogs? He moved to Toronto, couldn't take his pit bull.
Yeah, that's right.
Felt very bad for him.
I forgot about
that. But
right.
with that being said, like I look at a guy like Burley. I think maybe a little past his prime.
Yeah.
I mean, if he doesn't get signed, a non-roster invite you to spring training, go for it, see what happens. Like as far as Daniel Norris is concerned, he's your fourth, right? So as long as I think you mentioned it, as long as Sanchez and Verlander, and Zimmerman's 6 years after the Tommy John, right? So that number is weird because I think it was USA Today did an article that guys that had the Tommy John, I think it's after the 6th year, struggle a little bit. Maybe you have to have it done again. There's issues that pop up. So you worry about that just a little bit too. But overall, it's that baseball team that should compete, right? I mean, so look at the Indians. Forget the Indians, right? See it. Chicago.
They got a hell of a pitching staff, though, man.
They do. You're right. I mean,
Kluber
and I'll give that to you. You're right. But the Indians, to me, are always a team that they come in with high expectations the last couple of years, and they don't perform. And everybody loves Tito Francona. Everybody loves him. I'm not a huge fan.
You got to worry about the Twins.
But the Twins should be better, although they lost Torrey Hunter. But the Twins were very impressive. They and then I think the one team nobody talks about, and they always let you down. But one year I just have this feeling that they're going to be okay at Chicago. They go out, they get the Todd father.
They got a terrible manager, though.
They do. Ventura is a moron.
Ventura is not.
I would agree. Remember early on in the season, didn't even challenge a play at second base.
Yeah, he just sat there and he makes
it meant the game. Yeah, well, he looked like a genius a couple years ago when they did well, but now he's not that good. But they got Todd Frazier. They still have. I'm drawing a blank. Abreu, Adam Eaton in center field. Their pitching staff is good. Chris Sale's not going anywhere. Jose Quintana's all right.
They're finally done with that left-hander, the big...
Well, they got Alvesio
Garcia.
Yeah. Who's the big left-hander who just struck out all the time, hit the home runs?
Oh, that was Dunn. Adam Dunn.
He's gone.
I think he's
gone, I believe.
Didn't he win an Oscar?
He did.
He won an Oscar.
He's producing movies now. Yeah. He's absolutely right. That's absolutely right.
And he hit like 200... And every year, but he hit like 30 bombs.
To go back to what we started at the beginning of the show, maybe Boston, Detroit, and Detroit in the playoffs this year. Maybe Daniel Norris will pitch against David Price Game 7. How about that? Sticking it to Dave Dombrowski.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, by the way, I love Dave Dombrowski's movies. Like, all right, so I'm now in Boston. What's the first thing I do? I go get Craig Kimbrel. Thought of as the best closer in all of baseball.
He's been traded 3 times in 3 years.
Yeah, so you always wonder about that. Yeah. But that's the perfect
Kimbrel
team.
and Price.
The perfect team for Dombrowski because they got a bunch of prospects that he can trade away, and they got all the loot in the world.
Want to go to Wings there, Rogelio?
Yeah, let's change it up a little bit. And another interesting segue into the Red Wings there. As the Red Wings last night win in Buffalo 3-0. One of the most that Larkin pass to Zetterberg was one of the most prettiest prettiest passes I've seen in a long time, and that again the Wings getting it done. Razik only 19 saves last night, and
Michigan in there. No Michigan State stuff in here.
Red Wings poured it on.
It's not State.
Correct me if I'm wrong. They had Buffalo had Wings took about 40 shots. It seemed like early in the third period, they already had 40 shots. The Wings were just pelting on Buffalo last night. And the offensive woes have showed a little bit, but the Wings are still plugging along. But what do you guys see so far? Does the score need to pick up? Are they fine? There's just too much analyzation about the scoring, or the Wings doing what they need to do? And I'll start with Jeff over here.
Well, I think they're going to be okay. I think last night was nice just because they scored a couple goals. The last one was an empty netter by Glenn Denning. It doesn't count, but still, you take it. It was scoreless going into the third period, and I'm thinking to myself, same old Wings, same old issue. Glasgow says it's been going on for 2 years. I think it's been going on for more than 2 years. They struggle to score even strengths. But I think this is the year that Ken Holland has to go out and be bold. This is the year that he needs to go out. If it takes a first-round pick to improve this team, go. Because Zetterberg and Datsuk aren't getting any older. One's 37, I think Datsuk is. Zetterberg's 35.
As long as it ain't Kyle Critson.
No. Yeah, there's been some questionable moves by Ken Holland. I mean, just giving away Cal Yardcroc. The other thing is, too, Anderson placed on waivers, and you ended up losing, God, I'm drawing a blank. Who's the kid? Went to Boston.
Oh, there you go.
I know what's going on. And literally, his dad piece of play. Holy cow.
Oh, Furrow.
Landon Furrow. Thank you, my goodness. It's early in the morning.
I know, it's early.
I might need another slice of pizza here to get me going again.
But
I think this is the year that Ken Holland needs to go out. And he said, forget the picks. You need more scoring. Tatar and Nyquist, I feel, is way too inconsistent. Riley Shane shows flashes of brilliance, needs to be better. He's good in front of the net, needs to be better, though. And I got a guy, too. I got one guy that I've been touting for a while. And it's the Winnipeg Jets' Dustin Byfuglien. Now, he's a defenseman.
Byfuglien.
But I kind of call him Byfuglien. But
No, go ahead.
But no, he's a guy that puts you on your ass. He's a guy that can score in the power play. He's a guy that brings offensively to, the defense position. I was talking to one guy, and he brought up a great point. He's like, you got Mike Green and Dustin Byfuglien on the same team. It's very high risk, high reward. And I would agree 100%. However, this team needs to shake up. They need a bonafide scorer because we all hear about the greasy, grimy goals that you have to get in the postseason. They don't score enough of them. So you're telling me this team, and I'm impressed by him, I am, and I think Blashill's done a nice job. But all of a sudden they're going to start scoring in the postseason. I don't think it's going to happen. So I think this is the year that you need to be bold. And Ken Holland does care about his reputation around the NHL. And, Datsuk and Zetterberg have given him a lot. So I think this is the year you go out and you break your normal rules. Like Larkin should not be on his team. The normal rules say the youngsters don't make the team. They go to the AHL.
Last year he wouldn't have been here if it was Babcock was here this year.
You're probably right.
Yeah, fourth line, we talked about it last week. But I think he should have been bold last year. Tyler Myers. That's the guy I wanted. See, you know hockey better than me, but I think the scoring, I think they're lacking a number one D guy to get it up out of the zone. I think that's what's killing them.
Well, with Cronwall being gone now too, that doesn't help. He'll be back, obviously. But you're right. Another D-man.
He's a number two.
I agree.
Really. Like we were talking about Verlander, Kenny Rogers getting pushed down. That's where they need. Jeff Petrie was a guy they could have had last year. That's.
Dan was a good pitcher.
So, but I like your pick of, he was a great pitcher.
Well, that's the thing. There's not a really. I don't think there's a number one defenseman, or at least a top pairing defenseman out there, unless you put Byfuglien in there. But you haven't been as good, because you lost a lot of defensemen. Like Nick Cronwall or Nick Lidstrom went away, obviously. Yeah. Brian Rafalski, I thought was very good when he was here. Brad Stewart was another guy that I thought did a nice job. So I would agree. I think they need to be. They need a better defenseman. However, I think they've been at times more sound defensively, which I've been impressed by too. Not to mention, I think this year you got a goalie that can steal you a couple playoff series too. Peter Mrazek. And last year you can't say the same about Jimmy Howard.
How about the guy from Toronto, the defensive guy?
Yeah, he was rumored last year. I just don't think. I mean, listen, Phaneuf is great, and he would be that defenseman that you're looking for in the top pair. He puts you on your ass too. And makes good passes. I just don't know what it would cost to get him. And I always worry about Phaneuf is, does it just need a scenery change? Because I haven't been as impressed with him in Toronto as earlier in his career. But no, that's not a bad idea.
His hot girlfriend will come.
Well, there you go. See, I like hot girlfriends.
How about Nyquist? You think you can get it from Nyquist straight up?
No, I think it would probably cost a little more.
Yeah.
And Fanuff's got a huge contract too. I think he's got like 4 more years left on that deal. So I think it would take. You'd have to eat the contract, which they have cap space. They'd have to make cap space. They'd be fine. But I mean, Fanuff isn't a bad idea. I think they need, like, in a perfect world, they need their guys to be more consistent. That's the bottom line. Like,
Nyquist, Tatar.
and I understand scoring's tough, but like Brad Richards was a free agent acquisition. I thought there was a time during the course of the season where he was getting really good scoring chances, and that doesn't happen recently. It seems like at times he's a ghost out there. So I think scoring is an issue. We'll see what they do.
Well, and in terms of the blue line too, the defense just taking injuries after injuries. The injury depth right now, the blue line depth right now has to be a big concern. Offensively, yes, they're not scoring goals, but the injuries. I mean, how they're going to overcome the injuries? If guys have to keep coming up from Grand Rapids to fill the spot, and some of those guys may not be ready. I mean, Jeff, that has to be a concern going forward. I mean, Mrazek could be as a superstar as he can be, and he has done a very good job of staying on his head some nights, but the blue line's been taking a toll. The injuries have been taking a toll.
Yeah, I mean, Drew Miller, I know he's not a defenseman, but that hurts the penalty kill. He's doing gone for the season. I think he'll be fine. I would like in a perfect world. I know Andreas Athanasiou. He was up here earlier, real quick guy. I know he just coming off an injury. I like to see him again. Let's see once and for all what Anthony Mantha can do. And I know I'm naming forwards here, not defensemen. But you're right. I mean, Jonathan Erickson, everybody rips on him. I don't think he's as bad as most people say. But this is still a team, when push comes to shove, in a very tough division that's in second place, tied with Tampa Bay. And the one good thing about them is they win close games. I mean, you look at the majority of games that they've won, and while they don't wow you, they don't score whole goals. With the exception of Washington, not a whole lot of teams do in the NHL, but they're a team that can win close games. The problem is you need a couple more of those goals. I also think, like yesterday, 45 shots. The game before, 30 shots, and that was a loss. I think the chances need to be better, and I think that will come.
I was going to ask you a question because knowing that you're in the locker room, a lot of different times down there, covering the wings for 97-1 the ticket.
Until he gets kicked out.
Until he gets kicked out, exactly. But
hasn't happened in a while.
Blashill seems like a pretty decent guy. I mean, you remember how you were talking about how the consistency is different, about like how the Wings are playing all the young players? Could it be because they played under Blashill? I mean, with Blashill being here now, he basically raised the team that's there. I mean, why would he want to go out of his comfort zone? I mean, not that he doesn't want a free agent to help out, but wouldn't he rather bring somebody up from Grand Rapids that he already knows is producing down there or ready to play? I mean, wouldn't he be more comfortable with bringing up somebody that he's helped, from the very beginning of coming into the organization rather than a free agent?
I would say you have the ability to bring in whoever that can help you. I do that. I mean, Ken Holland doesn't make bold moves. He hasn't in a while. So, again, I just think this is the year. But, you can bring up whoever you want in the minors. But I'll never get out of my mind when Nyquist and Tatar and Sheahan, too, first played against Boston in the playoff series. They got a goal. They won 1-0 in that first game.
Yeah.
And then they got swept from that point on, so it was a 5-game sweep. And you could just tell those youngsters, I mean,
Over their head.
Yeah, I thought they hit a wall. I thought they hit a team that was better, and they could not compete to the level that they were used to during the course of the regular season. So I think you need to go out. You need to identify a scorer. It'd be great if you could identify a defenseman. The only problem, though, is this is a year, when you look at the standings, everything is so bunched up that there's not a whole lot of teams that might be willing to deal until we get closer to the deadline. Like, look at the Jets. I mentioned a guy like Bufflin.
I love the winger from the Anaheim, the tall dude.
Getzlaf, Barry Ryan.
Yes.
Yeah, the problem is,
Getzlaf is Brendan Shanahan to me.
Oh God! But you bring Ryan Getzlaf here. It's like the same as Steven Stamkos, all those difference, which will never happen because nothing would settle in a row.
Maybe Mike Ilitch is to be the general manager for the Wings, like he is with the Tigers.
Not a bad idea. Notice they were the Wings were a different team when there wasn't the salary cap era.
Yeah.
Well, that's when you can have all the Hall of Famers on your team and not have to worry.
How about Zetterberg? I mean, if Stanford's going to get a lot of grief in this town, even Calvin Johnson gets a lot of grief, when's Zetterberg going to start getting some grief?
2 goals in 2 games, dude. Come on. What's the
But
problem?
the last year in the playoffs, he really wasn't there much.
Well, I think he was also injured. I think Zetterberg's a guy that...
And I don't want to dog